Your first steps for your 1-point perspective drawing are included in this video. So let's take a look at your success criteria. A 9x12 finished piece using pencil. One vanishing point is clearly indicated through the use of perspective. Your piece is filled with buildings and perspective roads. You use rulers to create clean, straight lines. You have a precise level of perspective, a high level of complex composition, and you're demonstrating self-motivation, as well as not using any letters, trees, cars, or people. This is just pure buildings. So the first thing you are going to want to do is to make your horizon line. So I'm doing this about a quarter of the way down my paper, and it is a straight line from one side of your paper to the other. I know it's a little difficult to see because of your paper. Then at the middle of that line, approximate middle, you don't have to be perfect, you're going to place a dot. That is your vanishing point. Then you are going to make a slightly diagonal line down on one side, and then you will make a second diagonal line down on the other side. And that is going to give you your first perspective street. Towards the bottom, I am also going to add another horizontal line. So I'm going to draw a line to that first diagonal, pick up my pencil, and then finish the line on the other side. That's going to give me 2 corners to start my composition. Then you are going to take your ruler and lining it up on one of the lines. You are going to draw a vertical line going up. Now again, you do not have to do your buildings exactly the same size that I am doing, but you may decide that you want to do something similar. So 2 vertical lines going up. And I'm going to zoom in here a bit so you can see this a little bit better. Then you are going to use a horizontal line to connect your 2 other lines. You're going to erase any little bits of extra pencil that you have. So that's one side of your building complete. Now we're going to take and draw one of the diagonal lines. Those diagonal lines are often called orthogonals, and we're going to connect them back to the vanishing point. Anytime you use or using diagonal lines, they need to go back to the vanishing point. There should never be a diagonal line that does not go back to that vanishing point. Connect those 2 diagonal lines with a horizontal line, and you've now created a roof that is in perspective. So then you need to draw your last line down to your street corner. Line down. There you go. And now you have drawn your first building in perspective. I'm going to show you how to do one on the opposite side. It is the exact same process. The only difference is that rather than your diagonal lines going back to the left, they're now going to go back to the right. So I'm doing a slightly taller building here. Again, I'm using that grid paper to my advantage, trying to make my lines line up with the other lines so that I am making sure that all of my vertical and horizontal lines are straight. Always erasing little bits of extra overhang. We haven't even gotten into the heavy-duty erasing. So again, connecting one corner, I'm going to turn my paper here, back to our vanishing point because I'm doing a diagonal line. So while this building is taller, I'm actually going to make it a little bit not as bulky, not as long. So 2 diagonal lines going back to the vanishing point, and then connecting those 2 lines. Typically what I do is I always connect the shortest line and then erase any little extra bits. That is the easiest way to do this. And then connecting that last corner down to the street line. Now you have a couple of options for when you're adding additional buildings here. You can continue the line that you've already created so those two buildings can touch, which is what I'm going to do here. So I'm just going to continue that edge line from the previous building and make it taller. I'm going to continue making one side. And then I'm going to connect again, just like we did before, connect those two vertical lines with a horizontal line. Cleaning up the extra bits. Making sure that I am lining up my diagonal line with my vanishing point. Then I'm going to connect my last line down to the street corner. There, now I have two buildings on one side. I'm going to show you guys how to leave a space in between your buildings. So I'm going to slide my ruler over and I'm going to start with a new vertical line. This won't share a line with the previous building. So line up. Making sure the ruler is using that grid paper to your advantage. Connecting at the top, those two vertical lines. As you get closer to the horizon line, you will find the angle of the roof and the diagonal lines become shallower. So you'll start to see less of that rooftop that you are creating as you get closer to the vanishing point. Connecting those two diagonal lines across for the roof, and then bringing that last line down. Now you are going to need to connect the bottom line. So we don't want to draw through the building that already exists, but we can't not have a ground floor on the building. So we need to kind of add that bit in. And there you go. Now those two buildings have a gap in between. Maybe it's a park, maybe it's a parking lot. Now I'm going to add in some more streets. The idea here is that a city doesn't usually just have one street full of buildings and no other roads. So I'm going to add some additional streets here to break up that space and allow me to really fill the composition with more buildings, because this entire page should be filled with buildings by the time you're done. So there we go. We have three streets. Now I'm going to show you how to do a building that is above the horizon line, where the top is above. So I'm going to draw a straight vertical line going up, and I'm going to make sure that it passes that horizon line. I will draw a corresponding line next to it, connecting it with a horizontal line. And the way that this is different is that we will not see the rooftop, essentially. So after having drawn our first section of our building, we can erase the parts that perhaps have roads through it. And we're going to connect the corner down to the vanishing point. And that is the only orthogonal line we will need to draw because the building is above the horizon line, the top of the building. Then we'll connect that diagonal line down to our street. And that's it. So that is a building in perspective where the top is above our horizon line. If you find that when you are erasing, because there is quite a bit of erasing, and you need to go back over a line, because you get a little crazy with that eraser, go for it. Now for the rest of the drawing, I am just going to be adding additional buildings throughout this setup or composition. Again, where you decide to place your buildings is entirely up to you. The goal here is to have a variety of buildings that are different heights, different widths, and different lengths, because not all buildings are the same when we're looking at a cityscape. And as a reminder, your buildings should not have any lettering. We shouldn't see any people in our buildings. Always making sure that any diagonal line is going back to that vanishing point. Making sure you are lining it up and drawing your line back. There is a lot of erasing in 1-point perspective drawings. Now remember, sometimes you may need, depending on where your building is located, you may need to draw additional diagonal lines back. It all depends on which part of the composition you are working on and where it is in relation to that vanishing point and sections you have already done. Use those grid lines that are on the paper as a helpful guide. I personally find it helpful to erase lines that are no longer needed so that I am not confusing myself with additional information. It also helps to see the overall composition start to come together. For the rest of this composition, I am just going to be drawing buildings and filling in that space. Now, I know I said I was done talking, but I actually lied. There is one thing I would like to point out here, making sure that you're doing all of your lines for the building. So you can see here I am completing the roof line, but there's one more line I need to draw. If I don't draw this line, the building is actually like partially sinking below. So down at that bottom corner, I need one more diagonal line, and that one can be a little tricky. Sometimes we forget it. So make sure that all of your lines are complete.